Tēnā ko katoa, ko jir tiu tiene. I am the founder and CEO of the ReCreators, which is an upcycle collective based in Auckland, New Zealand. The overarching purpose of the ReCreators is to make waste valuable and providing local income to creatives, makers, while saving materials from landfill and hopefully preventing people from buying new products. We do this as a part of climate action, but also as a social enterprise, showcasing that it's possible to run a business while and earning a reasonable income while being kind to people and our planet. So the ReCreators is a collective of creatives who reimagine designs from waste materials. This means that a bunch of us get together, we share our knowledge and our training and our skills, and we help each other grow stronger as a unit. We design from discarded, new and reused materials, which takes a lot of creativity in itself. And it's simple to design something when you can just go online and buy a consistent source material, but it's more difficult to design when you're only given a certain quantity or type of good. So it does require a little bit of, or a lot of creativity. I'm just going to scroll down just to give you an idea of the workshops that we deliver. So this is our main source of income at the moment, and there's quite a bit of demand here. So at the moment, we're loading a number of Make and Give for Christmas. So this is encouraging people to learn to give a more sentimental gift that's made from existing materials, and we're providing the skills to do that. So we do that by teaching people how to use power tools and how to use deconstructed wood, so how to denail and strip and sand and do all sorts of things to make the wood look beautiful and new again. We do the same with furniture restoration. And then we teach kids and adults sewing. We do a bit of design work. So we've worked with kids where they've learned how to make a marble run, or every child or every adult in our course should leave with something that's uniquely designed by them, even though it's got a core focus. We do painting techniques, which are really simple. So we might use finger painting or dot art or entangling, anything that would enhance something that's really boring and turn it into something really quite beautiful, but it's also incredibly accessible and anybody can do it. We have also written a circular product design course, which we would like to deliver hopefully in 2021. Fingers crossed we get some funding to do that. And finally, after lockdown, we came up with the course of potions and lotions, which is basically cleaning and household beauty products, which can be made from about 10 or 15 core ingredients. And we teach people how to do that, save money, understand what's in the products and where they can source those. So that is a really practical example of what we do. So last year, I think we delivered in 2019, it was about 180 courses. And I think it was over 1,000 people. And this year, we're probably on track to maybe nearly double that, even though we've had COVID. So we're pretty busy now from now till the end of the year. So as I say, we design from discarded new reused resources. So we do a lot of networking. So we like to connect with the grassroots, zero waste businesses, social enterprises, community groups. We also like to connect with businesses through the Sustainable Business Network. So we like to understand what's at grassroots, what's in the corporate, and we also connect with Auckland Council. And the three groups that we largely work with are waste solutions, community empowerment, and regional development through the community centres. So I suppose there's a core belief around equity, social equity, and access to these types of classes. So we do try and price things so that they're affordable to most, or at least a good average people, rather than pricing things so that only the top 10% of New Zealand can buy them, because we believe that sustainable messaging needs to be equitable. We also think that by paying the minimum of the living wage, and we are accredited with the living wage, is part of being circular, because you cannot have a sustainable future if you do not treat people equally and equitably. So we also have the knowledge to source, make and design. So as a collective, we do tend to co-design nearly everything we do. We tend to look at a particular material, we'll hand it to one person for the initial design, and then it'll be passed on to somebody else. It generally goes through 3 or 4 people before the design is complete. And then in the manufacturing, it's the same process. So there's quite a few hands on something that we design before it's finalized. So there's a sense of shared ownership. Um, the ReCreators really support and promote behind the scenes the idea of maker spaces throughout Auckland and New Zealand. There are some small examples in Auckland, but we would really promote a large interactive facility that has woodwork, metalwork, sewing, and places for design workshops, and perhaps a cafe, something that's quite large and promotes circular entrepreneurship, with decent technology so that we can scale some of the design solutions. Finally, the ReCreators went to XLab. So we were one of 18 businesses who were looking for a circular business solution. And I'll talk about this a little bit later, but we came up with the idea of Revived Design, which is a platform which will connect waste streams to creatives globally and allow those designs to be shared internationally, but made locally, whereby you can chip at multiple streams of waste with really good quality solutions that can be turned into valuable products. So I've just included this graph here because sometimes it feels like the systems are broken in New Zealand, despite the recycling and the funding and the talk about circularity. You know, landfill is growing, consumerism growing, and this graph just demonstrates that with an increase in income, sees that people just buy more and then throw into landfill more. So how do we turn this around? How can we make waste valuable? So when I look at upcycling, these are some of our solutions which we want to talk about. So we think upcycling is circular business in action. So it's about maintenance, the skills to maintain, to reuse, to redistribute, to refurbish, and to remanufacture. So when we talk about circularity, there are 4 stages to carbon metrics. So we have extraction, manufacture, use, end of life. So what we do in upcycling is we want to eliminate the extraction and eliminate the landfill and just work within manufacture and use. So that's kind of where we want to focus. When you do that, when you work with existing materials, it's really going to be local because, as we can see, that shipping recycling around the world doesn't work and people don't want other people's waste. So it will, if it is successful, will be part of local economics and employment. It's linked to every town in New Zealand, and it's really like putting into practice distributive manufacturing. So where the waste exists locally, it could be turned into a valuable product in a maker space and then sold locally. So reducing that carbon footprint down, making it truly efficient. In order to do all of that, we really need to change behaviors. And I'll talk about that in the next slide, how we do that. But we really need to take our consumers and entice them to be buying something that's upcycled or circular rather than new and extracted resource. We want to be able to motivate businesses through their reporting. So hopefully in this term of government, we will see the top 200 companies mandatory report on their triple bottom line. So they're going to report on money, people and planet. And hopefully that will be really clear and will distinguish green from greenwash. And finally, we see upcycling as a skills development pathway. So I spoke earlier on that we can do some sewing, you can do hand sewing or machine sewing, but actually you can move forward and you can use laser cutters and other different types of high-tech machinery to help with scale, but also in terms of skills development. So the problem. So even though I think upcycling is incredibly positive, there is joy that is created in our workshops and in the making. At the moment, in terms of products, it is niche and not mainstream. You do not go into farmers or the warehouse and you do not see upcycled products. You might see green or greenwash products there, but they're normally still extractive in nature and not reuse. So that is our dream, that upcycled products will be part of our mainstream retail economy. At the moment, it's $10 a ton to dump, and it's going to go up to $60 a ton by 2025. So, as you can see, there isn't a huge price incentive there for businesses to be responsible with their waste. We do have businesses offer us their waste, and generally they're trying to give us something for free, and they rarely want to pay for us to redesign it. That's not always the case, but a lot of the time, um, they just want to dump, and they want to say things like, I don't want to dump. I would love to give it to you, but it's not my responsibility, and our garages are only so big. So really, there needs to be a responsibility on the manufacturer or the business to do something other than dump their waste. I don't know how aware the public are of the thing, of our waste issue. And I would say, even particularly around deconstruction and demolishing waste from buildings. So 40 to 50% of all our waste comes from the construction industry. Um, it really is an easy solve if we had it put into the building or resource consents that they must do something with their waste. And if there was more than, if there was the tonnage to dump was prohibitive, um, yeah, I mean, if we had those and with social procurement. So there's kind of three ways that we could deal with that. But certainly we love deconstructed waste. It's so beautiful to work with. You can strip something back and turn it into something brand new. Um, it does take time, but we don't have to pay for the resource. So it is definitely something we love to work with. So at the moment, there's a perception of secondhand out there. And I definitely even would say with wood is a great example. So you can refurbish wood, you can turn a piece of furniture back to new again, but you will not get that new price. And that, is really quite devastating in many ways, because you can get the most gorgeous 1940s piece of retro furniture, and you can actually strip it and sand it and turn it back into, something that's new, relatively easily, but that price is not recognized. And for some reason, I don't understand, but a crappy piece of MDF can fetch a higher price, even though it's made of crap. It's not going to last. That is the case at the moment, unfortunately. The other issue that we deal with in terms of upcycling is I should have written here, the inconsistency of material. So we're dealing with a lot of hodgepodge material. So it does take more time to work with these materials to try and turn them into something beautiful. And often it takes more time to either think of a design that's going to be consistent, or to produce something and then it's not consistent but harder to advertise and sell. So that means going on that the scalability is more complex. And so it would be great to get minds around this issue to see how we can scale inconsistent materials. So I've just included this Ellen MacArthur Foundation graph on circular economy, and I've kind of ringed the areas where I think upcycling lies. You need skills to be able to maintain, reuse, and distribute, which we teach in our upcycling courses. And then there's obviously the refurbish manufacture. So I kind of feel that what we teach in our classes sits in this area. So we need systemic change. We need systemic change to make an upcycle circular economy a reality. When I was doing my research for the ReCreators, I heard time and again how difficult it was to earn an income as an upcycler, and that is very, very true. I do feel that our workshops are definitely a way, although it is still incredibly time consuming to design and prepare the courses that we do, to gather the materials for them. But it still does pay an income. Whereas I think products is a much harder area to earn a living from, but we will persevere with that. So in terms of systemic change, we first of all think that education in the community is a great place to start in terms of grassroots development. We teaching the skills of sewing, weaving, woodwork, what we used to do in the past, which used to promote mindfulness and quiet contemplation. And it has been replaced with fast swiping and an incredible amount of information that is thrown at us, whether it be true or false. Um, And so it would be nice to kind of go back to the days where you do slow down, buy less, work less, and make more. And that is kind of a dream that we would like to see for people if they did buy less, work less, make more, stay at home, be more contemplative. But see where we go. So the next area is education and school. So obviously we run after school workshops, which are really popular. What I find, particularly when we work with lower decile communities, is that the consistency of having a program week in, week out is brilliant in terms of attracting children, providing some sort of stability, developing relationships, developing skills. One-off workshops are fine in school holidays, but I definitely feel that where we're making a difference in people's lives is through the after school consistent um, term workshops. I would love to see in high schools them teaching product design using circular business models. So the idea of developing a product where the schools at the moment will teach economics, they'll teach law and psychology and marketing and supply chain and pricing, but they do it based on new materials. So what if we added just a slight difference to that and we did it with existing materials? How would that look? What designs would they come up with? How could we use those designs throughout New Zealand? How can we get the schools working for us and then use them as our future generation and how they think about circular economy? So the next area around systemic change is products to purchase. So having upcycling products as part of our mainstream economy. It is a difficult area. We've been trialing it in the last year. And what we found is that it's really, really hard to get a margin without scale and without high tech equipment. And even though we have some high tech equipment in Auckland, the maker spaces are really quite small. They're small scale. So again, it makes it really difficult to compete. It is possible, but we really do need a circular center of excellence. We really need some top end high tech equipment so that we can transform some of these materials that we're working with. At the moment, it is quite difficult. And it's also difficult to do at grassroots without a large amount of money for marketing. So, in terms of maker spaces, this is where technology meets makers. It's where locals and small to medium sized businesses can get together and work with expensive machinery, but only pay a monthly or a weekly or a yearly subscription. They create entrepreneurial hubs. It's brilliant shared learning, just like our collective. It's a great way to work. It's great to use high tech equipment when you don't have to own it and you can just share it. You're sharing the overall costs of the space. And it's a great place for social innovation. Finally, the idea of shared platforms with the likes of Mutu, Foodprint, or Rent the Runway, or Carbon Click. I'll just go on to that. Where we can really scale how we work through technology. So, as I said, the ReCreators went to X Labs earlier this year, and we learned about the 6 principles of circular economy business models, which is really interesting to think about. So, most circular businesses or business models may incorporate some of these 6 components. So, you aren't always necessarily just one, you may be 1, 2, or 3. So I'll just talk a little bit about those. So the first one is the idea of sharing or getting together and networked participation, which are the words from Louise Nash and circularity. The idea that instead of owning, that we can either rent or share or swap. And so Mutu is an example of this. The ReCreators is an example in the sense that we share our skills and we do it together so that we are stronger. The next one is exchange or circular business models. This is where we would, so we can swap out resources. So a good example of this is container deposit schemes, which are brilliant. You know, it's a much more low carbon circular business model is so that you can wash something and reuse it. The next one is optimize, or the idea of smart materials. So that's the idea where you actually build for longevity, you build for the long term. You think about what are the best materials that will last the longest, and will those materials break down and decompose naturally. So what can we do to make a product last as long as it can, rather than what we have today, which is things that last a very short time and are meant to expire. So the next area is regenerate, or regenerative behaviors. So this is my favorite because I'm a gardener and I love being in the garden, and I see circularity all the time around me in a garden. So I grow something from seed, I watch it flower, fruit, I watch it wither away, I watch the seeds come again, drop and fall and go again. Same with the whole idea of compost. So it is really beautiful to see nature in progress and in its circular glory. And what we really want to try and do is, wherever possible, we want to be able to mimic this in what we produce. So if we produce something, to think that we use materials that will naturally decompose, or so an example would be using things like wool or natural fabrics rather than fabrics with plastic in them, so that it can actually decompose. The next circular principle is loop, or closed loop systems. This is where you shift from linear to circular. So a great example of this is the again cups, where you go to cafe, you pay a deposit for a metal cup, you use that and you bring it back to a cafe within the chain. And so it's a circular loop system. And finally, virtualize, which is the idea of using technology and platforms to scale a solution. So enabling people to network. So going back up to share. So you're enabling a community to network and participate through a platform and share a service, a product, an idea, a design. And that's a really great way to promote circularity. Okay, so here are some examples. So the idea of Rent the Runway, which is a brilliant example where, if you like fashion and you want to have different clothes, where you can just rent some clothes and then send them back after a period of time and get some new ones again. Mutu is where you can share anything locally. Foodprint is where you have access to food that's about to expire. Carbon Click is where you can purchase you pay some of your carbon footprint towards the product. And Kogo is where it supports all green businesses. So our solution is going to be called Revive Design, the idea of designing globally and sharing locally and making locally, of designs that are scalable and circular in nature. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about how we design certain products. So there's two ways of designing. So one is by supply. So if we get donated materials from business, we often will look and play with those materials. It's a great place to do it already because we have after school classes and school holidays. So we can bring those materials with us into class, and sometimes our participants can play with them. So we think of a design. We think it needs to be simple but high value. So it needs to be relatively easy to make, and it needs to be able to sell for quite a bit. We need to think about the business processes, the manufacturing processes, and the time it takes, as well as the resources. We need to look at the equipment that we can use to help scale it and reduce our costs. And we need to think about how we can get that price point and margin correct, which is really difficult at the best of times. And how we can scale it. The other way that we have designed is by reverse engineering, is by looking at something that already exists, that is made from extracted resources, and think about how we can make it from existing resources. So you can see on this picture here that there's that butterfly mobile. So that was reimagined from something that my daughter was given, which was wholly plastic. And that she enjoyed making. And I just looked at it and thought, well, how can we make that so that it will be reused and natural? So we've used cardboard for the butterflies that have been laser cut. We can use t-shirt yarn instead of plastic string. We've used wool to tie it together, and we've used discarded wood as the banner. And so we've used resins paint, which is quite hard and needs to be just you just need to put some water into it to make it reuse, but they can't sell it. So we try everything in that pack is completely upcycled and reused to make something else. So then it's whether or not the price point is accessible to most and affordable, and whether people want it. So we're going to go green um, weekend after next, and we'll let you know how we go. The other designs that we've been working on is a runner bike. It's a fairly basic design that you can make with plywood. And so we're looking at that, whether that we can use deconstructed wood that can be cut through a laser cutter and made into a running bike at the guts of. We're struggling a little bit with the wheels, so they will potentially have to be new. It's quite expensive to design something around tires. But again, it's an example of where we try and look at something that already exists and see what we can do. And if it may be that it's 70 or 80% reused. So this is where we're going to talk about our platform. So the challenge that we brought to X Labs is how can we significantly reduce our waste to landfill while at the same time creating valuable products from discarded resources and creating local employment in New Zealand. So we came up with the idea of revived design because we know that there are upcyclers all over the world who recover resources and design creatively with them. And we wanted to be able to enable that large market to come together and work for each other in a local way. So turning valuable resources into low carbon products with more social, environmental and economic outcomes. So the range of circular designs will be shared globally, made locally in every town and city. We're currently working on a wireframe with Mission Ready HQ. So that's going to be available for user testing just in terms of the design of the platform. And once that passes the design by users, then we will start to develop it. So we've been really lucky to have a number of volunteers from Help Tank do the initial research and then Mission Ready HQ to do the wireframe, but we are looking for some funding down the track to help us get developers to work with this. The idea is that we would have solutions for lots of waste streams that you could literally go in and search the material and find some solutions that could be made, and that would be alternatives to new extractive products. We hope that as well, that over time with the waste levy increasing, that there is way more incentive for businesses to want to work with this type of platform. At the moment, when we did our research, businesses are not interested, nor are retailers, and that's really heartbreaking. But I mean, all we can do is hope that with limited resources and with the idea that we need to be more circular, that these types of platforms will become more popular. So our ambition around reimagining 2040. So we did this as an exercise in X Lab where we reimagine the future. So we thought that 30% of reusable resources could be products, and that would be the norm. So that, you know, that when we go into retail shops in the future, and they're probably not going to be shops, there might be something quite different, that they are made with reused and existing materials rather than extractive new materials. We would be able to report on this through the number of resources that have been reused, the number of products, hopefully the number of business involved. If businesses have to triple bottom line report, this will be excellent. We will be able to compare this. So a summary here. Whew. So how do we significantly reduce resources to landfill by making valuable products? So we have the ability to make a local decentralized employment through a thriving circular economy. And so I'm hoping that someday we will be able to achieve this. If anybody has any questions out there, or you would like us to run a workshop and experience what it's like for a skills-based lesson around woodwork or weaving, please let me know. That's where our strength is. We love being at grassroots level. And hopefully in the future, we'd love to be able to measure the behaviors of attendees to our workshops and whether they reimagine waste into valuable products, because that's where our scale can also be. Anyway, thank you, Zero Waste Network, for having me. Kia ora koutou.